What's up, guys? Today I'm going to go over how to manage your environment variables for your test automation when it's written in Python. Today we're going to go over step by step, starting from scratch, building out a test in Python. Ultimately, once you have a certain test, you're going to have to connect to different services, APIs, databases, and you're going to have to manage the authorization. You have to manage the users, passwords. And what you want to do is you don't want to check those into source control. You want to potentially swap them out depending on what you're testing in the QA environment, the staging environment, and you're ultimately going to want some kind of solution to allow you to switch those in and out without having them hard-coded into your actual tests or any of your helper libraries, and be able to change them out depending on the environment you're running on. So I'm going to go through this example. I'm going to go start from scratch, set up a test, connect to a database, and then go back and refactor it so that we can leverage an environment variable solution to make it easier to manage these variables. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going ahead and add pytest. That's the primary library I use for running my tests. We're going to need to connect to Postgres, so let's go ahead and add the driver for that. Awesome. Okay, and then if you look in the directory now, you'll see that I have a .venv. That's my virtual env Poetry created for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and source that so that I have access to all the libraries. Let's go ahead and get in here. I'm using NeoVim. Here's my directory. Let's go ahead and create a test file. Test. Let's go with database connection. All right, so here let's define test. There's a user table. I have a database running, a Postgres database running locally on my machine through Docker. It has one table called user. So test user table. Let's go with test query user table. Some docstring. Validate we can query user table. All right, awesome. So from here, let's go ahead. What we're going to need a connection. So for the connection, we're going to have to import the driver. Awesome. Connect, and here we're going to have to set the host equal to localhost. The database name is test with code. We're going to have the user, Postgres is the username. Let's go ahead and let's use a context manager. And then here we're going to have to also create a cursor. And from here, let's execute a select statement. Select star from public.user. And then let's get the result. Cursor dot. Let's fetch all the results. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm using these context managers to open up a connection to the database. As you can see here, I have the host name, database name, and a username to make the connection. And then on this line, I'm opening up a cursor for the database. I'm using this cursor to execute a query in this case, and then I'm going ahead and fetching the results from that cursor. And then let's just go ahead and print the result here to make sure. Okay, let's open up our terminal here. So poetry run pytest, and I can run my test file right here. So I should run this, and I should expect the result to come back. Okay, I mean, this might be a little difficult to read, so let me just zoom it out a little bit. But basically what it's saying is I'm on the wrong port. So, sorry. I have it running on a separate port, 5430, not the typical Postgres port, which is 5432. So let's change the port. Go ahead and try that. And then, yeah, the password. So here's where it gets kind of tricky. Sometimes you go ahead and enter the password. Password is password, and for the most part, it's not going to be a big deal to put it here. Because this is my local RAN database, it's not like a QA environment or a production environment where the actual password matters and the user matters, and it's a security risk. This is just local. Let's go ahead and try this. test. Oh, I spelled test wrong. Let's go ahead and change that. All right, sweet. And then for pytest, you have to pass in some flags. If you didn't know what that does, pass in some flags to get more descriptive output, so that anything I do print to the console is actually going to come out. I think by default, running the test just gives you a dot for pass. So as you can see here in this area, you can see the results came back. Awesome. So we were able to run the test and it works perfectly. So here's where environment variables come in. Like, let's say you don't want to store an actual password here that you want to connect to, let's say your staging environment, QA environment, production environment, don't want to store this password. Or hey, maybe you just want to change these because you can test multiple environments because your development team has the ability to deploy in multiple different environments, and you want to be able to switch your tests. Or if you're running your tests in CI/CD, you might be able to want to adjust it and point it to a different environment without having it hard coded here. So virtual environment variables are a great way to do this. There's a package for Python called python-dotenv. If you're familiar with like the .env package in Node or library in Node, it's pretty much the same thing except for Python. So let's go ahead and just install that. So I'm back here. I'm using Poetry, so let's go ahead and let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, Poetry, add python.env. Perfect. All right, let's get back into the test. So I'm here. First thing I want to do is I want to import .env, or from .env import load.env. And then at the top of your file, you just do load.env, run that. What this is going to do is it's going to look for a .env file in the root of your project, and it's going to load that file and create those environment variables temporarily, so that when you run your Python code and in the context of this test, it'll have access to those environment variables. This way you can set it easily with this file. You can add a .env sample to let others know kind of what environment variables that your test automation framework is expecting. And it just makes it a lot easier than having to actually set the environment variables and changing it on your actual machine without this file. So we're loading it here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create a .env file. And then here, let's set up some of the variables that we might need. So Postgres, let's say host, and this was localhost. Postgres DB name, this with the code. Postgres user, which was Postgres password. Equals password. Okay, so now these are the environment variables. It's very simple. You set the variable name and then you set the value. It's pretty simple. You can okay, so we have this set. Next, we want to kind of come in here back to our test file, and then we have those environment variables available to us. So now we want to be able to pull those variables. So in Python, in order to operate with environment variables, you want to pull in OS. So import OS. So let's say host equals os.getenv. And the environment would be Postgres host. Let's do this for DB name, user, password, DB name, user, password. All right, now let's go ahead and replace these values. Oops. Host. Ooh, port. Okay. Go ahead and add that one into, I don't think I have that. I'll go back and add it to the .env file in a bit. So port, DB name, user, whoops. Password. Okay, let me just reformat that real quick. All right, so this is pulling from each of these variables. Let's open up the .env file. One thing we need to add here is port, Postgres port, and like we had this earlier, it was 5430, I believe. All right, that's all set. Now I have my .m file with my environment variables that's supporting this test, and in my actual test, I'm not hard coding any actual connection values for the database connection. No passwords are shown here. What you want to do with this .env file too is you want to add it to your .ignore file. You don't actually want to check this file in. This is just for you. This is for your machine. What might help if you're working with other developers on your test framework is to add like a .env.sample, and you want to paste this in here, and then you can just have no values in here. And this is just more like just to tell them what they can expect to fill out in order to get your test to run. And then you can check this one in, but your .env file with your actual credentials should probably be in your ignore and not be checked into your repository or pushed to GitHub or anything like that. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. Let's run this test again. Perfect. So we're able to connect to the database, and then we're able to query the results. And there it goes. One last thing. What I like to do, it's just a pattern that I follow specifically, is I like to create a config file. I add the things in here into this config file, like this .env here and all these values here. I like to just add them here. It just keeps all the variables in one spot. And then from your actual tests, you can remove some of this. You don't need to run .env. You can just import from config, import let's set this expected host port, db name, user, password. This is a way that I like to clean it up. That way it kind of keeps all your environment variable configurations into a single config file. And then let's say you want to write some other connections, or you have more variables that you want to use a .env for, you can just put it in your config file. And maybe you have some other configurations that don't pull from .env. Maybe they could just fit in there. That's just a pattern I like to use, not necessarily just for environment variables, but it's just a nice way to clean things up. And then I can just pull from the configs here, and I know where to go if I need to change any of those. But yeah, this is a great way to manage your configurations, your environment variables, especially when you're testing locally. And then when you go into CI/CD, typically they allow you to set environment variables for every run. And then you can basically set these values that you have here in your test, and it'll just run smoothly. You don't need to worry about a .env file up there or anything like that. Love this way of managing it. I think it works really well. I highly suggest you use it. Cool. Thanks.